Hey YouTube, today I want to tell you 5 things about Leo Fender that maybe you didn't know, maybe? Woo! Leo Fender is a personal hero of mine and one of the people in the guitar world that I just really admire a lot. He, of course, is the big name. Everybody knows Big F Fender, and it's a giant in the guitar industry. But he has a very, very interesting life, and one that I have really enjoyed studying and learning about, and one that has impacted me by the example that he led in life. And so today I want to give you 5 things, and I think this might, be a series because I had to narrow it down. There's so many cool things I could tell you about Leo Fender, but in this video I'm going to tell you 5 things about him very quickly, just to give you some really cool insight into him as a person and his effect on the world and some interesting personal characteristics. So I'm not going to bury the lead. I'll tell you the 5 things right now really quick, and then I'll get into each one in a little more detail. First is that he was born in a barn on a farm. Number 2 is that he lost his eye as a kid. Number 3 is that he had a degree in accounting, and that it was actually the context of the Depression that caused him to fall back into his own personal interest in radio repair. The next thing is that he actually had the idea for the solid body guitar because of his work in setting up these parties for war bond buying during World War II. And then number 5 is that he sold Fender not because he was just trying to, get all the money he could get. He really didn't care about money and he didn't live big. He sold it because he thought he was dying. So in this video we're going to talk a little bit more about each of these 5 interesting things about Leo Fender. So when we think of Orange County, California today, we think of a thriving beach community, kind of a ideal, typical California subculture. But we have to understand that Clarence Leonidas Fender, I'll give you that one for free, Leo Fender, when he was born in 1909, that was still a relatively rural area. California was not the mega state that it is today. It was still, coming off of being the western frontier in the 19th century. And so his parents were Germanic stock. They were hardworking people. And when they bought the farm, the only building on it was a barn. And so they had to, while they were building the house, they had to live in the barn. And his mother gave birth to him in a barn at home, on a farm. And so those are the roots that we're talking about with this guy. Like we might think, all of what became Fender, but the origins in his life were as a kid growing up working on his parents' farm in a small town community. Fullerton was a small town at that point, and these were mainly fields, and it was just starting to build up when he was born there. And so that was very important to his life because it defined his hardworking nature, and that he didn't value money and glamour and fame and all these things. What he valued was, steady relationships with good people and hard work and, just putting your hand to the plow and that sort of thing. So number 2 is that he lost his eye as a kid and for the rest of his life ended up having a glass eye. And there is some disagreement out there, not necessarily disagreement, but there's 2 different kind of stories that you might come across looking online. One of them comes from an article that's actually on the Fender website, 8 Things You Didn't Know About Leo Fender, something like that, which I promise I'm not just copying from them. I have my own list, and then as I was doing some feeling out there to see what else is out there before doing this video, I saw it and I was like, oh great. But it's a different list. We have some overlap, but it's also different, and it's just a little quick list. But on there it says that he lost his eye as a kid because of a tumor. And from the books that I've read, the physical sources that I've read, it was because he was working on his parents' farm, and they would go to the farmer's market with the family truck, and he was cleaning it out in the evening, and as he was cleaning it out, at some point in that process, he slipped and fell, and in the darkness didn't see he landed on a fence post. And I even have an interesting, I got this for my kids. This is a, kid's biography of Fender. It's a really cool one, looking at him as a role model for just, all the imagination and innovation of a kid and so forth. And here you have the the scene of him falling out of the back of the truck. And this is corroborated. I'm not just getting this from a kid's book. This is corroborated by other sources as well. But so he fell and he hurt his eye. There might have been, like, it might be that both are true, that because of the injury a tumor developed and they couldn't save it. That's probably the full story, is that it's not an either or, but like an injury led to a condition and they couldn't save his eye. So, and the other thing is that he had the injury at 7, he lost his eye at 8, so there probably was a process in there. Anyway, he loses his eye, but one of the things about it, like, that's well known, but something that particularly in his biography by his second wife, Phyllis, she talks about how he never complained. He never complained, she said, a day in his life about anything. And he had, all sorts of different things to complain about, but he just didn't. He was a very hardworking, salt of the earth type guy, and he just, he saw no value in complaining, and so he just always was headed forward. He was like, he's got that farm spirit, always plowing the field out there, and, don't worry about what's back there, worry about what's ahead of you. And that was his personality and character. So the third interesting thing about Leo Fender is that his actual education was not in music or electronics or engineering or any of that. His actual degree was in accounting. And you have to understand, he was born in 1909, and so he was coming up in that world of, the economic booms of the 20s and so forth, right? And so you have him as a young 20-year-old young man now going out into the accounting workforce when the stock market crashes. And so he lingered through a few jobs, and when he finished kind of pulling back from accounting and he kind of went back home and tried to figure out, what am I going to do next? What he fell back on was, and this was his understanding, is that people always need repairs. And particularly in a time when you can't afford something new, you have to rebuild what is old. And so he fell back on his childhood love of dismantling electronics. He, thanks particularly to his uncle, was just fascinated with taking stuff apart and putting it back together and see if it would work again, or if it didn't, or if he could change this, or if he could do that, or why does this, why is that. You see, that was the way his mind worked, and he loved doing that. And so when he pulled back out of the accounting world, what he ended up doing was opening a electronics and radio repair shop. And that ultimately is what led to him developing the electric guitar, was that he thought more and more as an electrical engineer. Again, he didn't have any training in it, he didn't have any schooling in it, but he was just an absolute genius in that his mind loved to dismantle things, particularly electronics, particularly wiring and all of that. He just loved thinking through it and, well, why do you do this? But what if you do that? And what if you do this? And that was the way his mind would work, which is ultimately what led him to develop the broadcaster, nocaster, telecaster, the early solid body electric guitar. My number 4 thing about Leo Fender that maybe you don't know is that he actually got the idea, the inception for the solid body electric guitar, what ended up becoming the Telecaster. He got the idea from, here's the process, right? So he was very patriotic, very, very patriotic, and in World War II he really wanted to go, but he had one eye. He couldn't for physical reasons. And so because of that, he tried to think, well, what am I good at? And what can I do to help? And what he decided was to help the war effort by helping to organize these community war bond parties. And he would organize by getting bands together and getting venues set up and all of this, all for the purpose of getting war bonds to help the war effort. And it was in that process, because he was really good at doing early PA systems and setting all that up, and he was learning more and more and more about microphones and all the ways that amplification happens and all that, and what led to his early development of amps, right, amplifiers. And so one of the things that he discovered is he loved guitar, he loved hearing guitar, he loved guitar music. He was not himself a guitarist, but he loved listening to guitar. But in a big band setting, the guitar is almost, unless everybody quiets down for a solo, the guitar is just a tiny little background, strumming. It doesn't come to the forefront. And as they were attempting to amplify these early electric designs, primarily hollow body designs, and where they're experimenting with putting electric pickups onto basically otherwise acoustic guitars. You have all the feedback and distortion and all of these problems. It became difficult to cut through the mix, or it cut too much through the mix and all of this. And so it was in talking with guitarists at these functions that he started spinning his gears that ultimately led to the development of his first solid body guitar. So the number 5 thing about Leo Fender concerns why he decided to sell Fender to CBS in 1964. And this concerns his personal health. And you have to understand that Fender just did not care about money. He didn't care about money or fame or glory or any of that. What he cared about in life were his family and his job, basically. And it was not a job to him. He loved to work. And it was not, you know, the drudgery of going to work for him. He loved to do it. And so it was not a matter of him just trying to cash out and go, you know, make it rain and live big. He didn't care about any of that. In his eyes, he had been given a death sentence from his doctor, and he thought he was dying. And so he tried to get everything settled so that his first wife, Esther, wouldn't have to deal with all of the complications that would come with selling a huge company like that. But then he got a second opinion. They did this, you know, new treatment to him, and he recovered. And then it was, you know, kind of, well, what's next? And that led to, in the late 60s, he went back to work for Fender. You know, I mean, that should tell you enough that he didn't care about money, is that after he sold the company and recovered from his health issues, was the first thing he did. He went back as a consultant. He made CLF research, that's Clarence Leonidas Fender research, and he went back as a consultant to the company. And you know, just continued working because it was not about the money to him. And so sometimes, you know, we might get this image of him, oh, he cashed out and he was, you know, hitting the lottery with all of those millions. That just was not his thing. He didn't care about the money or the glory or fame or reputation or any of that. What he cared about were salt of the earth stuff, family and work. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief little skipping stone across the pond of Leo Fender's biography, and hopefully I've given to you a taste of my admiration for him, that I really do admire him and respect him. And there's a lot more I could say. I'm trying to just be quick and give you guys some, you know, neat little facts and ideas about him to take with you during the day. There's so much more. So if you guys are interested, let me know. Let me know if, you know, there's one of these points that you really found particularly interesting. And if you want to keep seeing these sorts of videos, let me know in the comments, because I can keep cranking them out. I got a lot to say about this guy. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel in that push for monetization. So every new subscriber is deeply appreciated as I try to climb that seemingly perpetual mountain. Thank you, YouTube. But thank you all so much for watching, and comment. Love to hear your comments. You'll have a wonderful day.